Joining us now on Pod Like a Champion is Yolanda Jackson, who is the mother of Deion Colzie, a four-star wide receiver commitment in the Notre Dame 2021 class. So a couple of weeks ago on our last show, we had Mark Spindler come on, the father of Rocco Spindler, another Irish commit. And maybe 2 or 3 hours after we posted that podcast, I get a text from Yolanda saying, Mike, I want to come on your next show. And it's really funny, Yolanda. I had 2 emails and one person messaged me on Twitter saying, love the interview with Mark. You need to get Yolanda on there. And my response was, I don't know if Yolanda would want to. I'll reach out to her. I didn't even have to reach out to her because she reached out to me. Yolanda, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
You're welcome.
So you're currently in Augusta, Georgia.
I am.
I think a lot of people just kind of figure that Deion is an Athens kid because he goes to Athens Academy, but he's from South Atlanta. And then you moved out to Augusta. For those who don't know where Augusta, Georgia is, it's basically on the Georgia-South Carolina border. Of course, Deion is still in Athens. Just kind of break down, what is that like? You know, with Deion, 2 hours away, you're in Augusta. How hard is that on you?
Well, I'm used to it now, actually, because it's kind of been the case ever since he started going to Athens Academy. So I'm really used to him not being here. I do get to see him every Friday because I try to make every single game. I think since he's been playing, I've only missed, I think, 1 game, maybe 2. So I get to see him every Friday, get to see him every weekend. So it's prepared me, though, for him going away to college. So it won't be as hard on me when he gets ready to go to Notre Dame because I've gotten used to him kind of not being here. It is hard, though, you know, as a mom, as a parent, not having him around, but it makes me appreciate our time together that much more when I do get a chance to see him. So I would say it's not bad.
For our YouTube audience, you guys can see Mrs. Jackson's awesome Notre Dame shirt, and she's even got a poster of Deion in Notre Dame gear. You pretty excited that he? I want to say that maybe you're a Notre Dame fan or something like that.
Yeah, maybe this much.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. I am. I did want to clear one thing up. I saw on one of the interviews that I think it was GPB did with Deion. And I think she said that he was born and raised in Athens, which he was not.
Right.
So I do want to clear that up. Like you said, he is from Atlanta. We're from Atlanta.
McDonough.
McDonough.
In the house.
In the house. So we're from McDonough. So I just wanted to clear that up, that, you know, he is from, you know, south of Atlanta. And not born and raised in Athens. We just chose to send him to Athens Academy. That's all.
You want to know who else was born in McDonough, Georgia? Me. I'm also.
You.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, that's where I grew up. So how about that?
Mm-hmm. So I'm sorry. You asked me another question. What?
Patrick. I know. I just asked you about if you're a little Notre Dame fan. Patrick's got something else for you, though.
Oh, let me answer that because I need people to know.
Okay.
I am a huge Notre Dame fan, and I have been for as long as I've been a football fan, which is a very long time. So definitely a Notre Dame fan.
So given that, and obviously you've heard about the school and have followed the team to a degree since before Deion was started getting recruited by them, and one thing we kind of heard all throughout the recruitment and even after Deion reopened things was your comfort with Notre Dame that was there early on and still kind of remained there even after he initially decommitted. Why did that really kind of persist and remain? And I'm sure it was one of the reasons that Deion never stopped considering Notre Dame even when he reopened things.
Well, For me, we actually sat down and we talked with Deion like the night before he decommitted. We actually had a family um, had family communication about, you know, his decision or him wanting to decommit. And one of the things that we told him was, listen, if this is what you really want to do, you know, you need to make sure that you call Coach Kelly personally and let him know what your intentions are. And I think, and he did that. And the fact that Notre Dame actually ramped up their recruitment of him after he decommitted. I mean, and I heard from, you know, from Coach Reese, from Coach Dale Alexander, you know, from Coach Kelly, that all his decommitment meant was that they were going to have to recruit him harder. And they did that and never stopped. So I, you know, out of respect, you know, for them just not giving up, you know, I thought, you know, this is serious. They really do, you know, they really do want him because, you know, as Mike has reported before, there was a time when Deion was not very responsive to Notre Dame at all. And they could have easily given up. And then there were even times, you know, when it was reported that, you know, when it was reported about his top three that, you know, they weren't a part of the top three that was reported. And they could have easily given up, but they didn't. They stuck with it, and he ended up back there. And so it's a win-win for everybody.
The top three you mentioned, I remember that was an interview with Chad Simmons of Rivals, and it was Alabama, Florida, and Tennessee. And
Right.
Yolanda, what you're saying, I've praised the Notre Dame staff as well in our shows and in articles of what I was told in March, and I'm sure you were told this as well, Yolanda, was that Notre Dame was going to continue to recruit your son as long as there was a pulse. As long they were eliminated from the top group, they didn't care. We're going to still recruit you until you signed or you tell us, I am not going to Notre Dame. Stop contacting me. Unless that happened, maybe they would have still even recruited Deion if that happened, but they kept on him.
Yeah, they did. And I have a lot of respect, you know, for them for that. But for me as a parent and me personally, what that showed me was that they really believed in the two-way process. And I mean, you know, they believed that Deion, you know, is a good fit for Notre Dame and Notre Dame is a good fit for Deion. And so when I saw that, you know, it just kind of amped up my love for the school even more, you know, that, you know, because in my contact with them, they just kept preaching that to me. You know, we still believe that Deion's a good fit for Notre Dame and Notre Dame is a good fit for Deion. So, you know, kudos to them for staying on top of that.
So you did mention there for a minute that there was a period where Deion was unresponsive for a bit, and I imagine that was kind of the case with a lot of the schools that were recruiting him. And I'll never blame a recruit for wanting to try to step back for a minute. I'm sure this is a hectic thing that every day of lots of people getting in contact with you and wanting to recruit you. From where kind of you were standing as a parent and being involved in the recruitment itself, how did you observe kind of the process wearing on him to a degree, or just kind of getting to the point where it's a lot and a lot to kind of deal with on a daily basis?
It was a learning curve for us, actually, because before his decommitment, you know, I was very hands-on in the recruitment process. And that's not to say Deion, you know, wasn't handling his business himself, but I was very hands-on. And then what I found out after he decommitted was that, and this kind of came up in our family conversation, was that, you know, I needed to take a step back and let him kind of maneuver the process. So it was a learning curve for me. And it was hard for me to do that, but I realized that in order for him to make a decision that was best for him, I had to step away a little bit and allow him to do that. And so we did. After his decommitment, we didn't, bother him much about the recruiting process and what was going on. Every now and then I would just kind of check in and say, hey, what schools have you heard from? How's everything going? But I left everything really up to him and let him handle it. One thing he did say he was going to do, and he did do, was every single time he got an offer from, another school, he would always call us and let us know before he put it out on social media. He would call and say, hey, I got an offer from Auburn, or I got an offer from whoever. So he would call and let us know, before he put it out. So I appreciated that. So we really tried not to bug him, because we knew that he was being absolutely bombarded by coaches, by a lot of the recruiting analysts and all of that stuff. So we kind of stepped away from it, and it turned out for the better.
As a reporter who covered Deion pretty closely, I knew that, okay, if he's not getting back to college coaches, he ain't getting back to me. So I just stopped trying to talk to Deion. I went out to Athens. I made that quick 1.5 hour drive. I'll just go see him in person.
Right.
So for you taking a step back, Yolanda, and he still picked the school that you really wanted, that had to have been just so satisfying. And also, like, hey, maybe I did something right in raising this kid if he picked this school.
The funny part about the whole situation was the very first time we visited Notre Dame, which was back when Deion was a sophomore.
Ball State,
the Ball State
2018.
game.
Yep.
The very first time we visited and we walked the campus, one of the things he told me was, he was like, I really like it here. It feels like home. And we had always told him that whenever you get to the point where you start visiting schools, you will know the one that's right for you, because you'll feel it. And so he felt that the very first time we stepped on campus, and for me, that was huge, but him recommitting it was a surprise, but it wasn't a surprise. I know. Because of course he told us, maybe about a couple of weeks before he put his video out. And I'll never forget, it was really funny, because I was sitting and we were FaceTiming each other. I had on matter of fact, I might have had this shirt on. And so he was like, Mom, you want to know where I'm going? And I was like, yeah, I guess. And so he said, oh, you don't really want to know then. Never mind. And I said, no, tell me. So he said, look down. So I started looking at the floor, and I was like, look down? What's on the floor? And then he started laughing, and he was like, Mom, no, look down. So I finally looked down at my shirt, and I was like, are you serious? And then he said, yeah. And so I was just like, I was, nothing on this earth could have spoiled that day for me after that. So I was pretty happy.
That's 2 weeks in a row, Mike, or 2 podcasts in a row, I should say, where we've heard some
awesome
pretty
stories.
Cool, awesome. Inside, behind the scenes stories of when the recruits have told their parents.
Well, who's the next parent to be on this podcast? We need more. These are awesome.
Well, we have to find out what Tyler Buckner's parents thought when sophomore year Tyler told him, "Yep, I want to do this and I want to commit here." Yeah, this is some interesting inside baseball stuff here. But to get back to one thing you had touched on a little bit earlier was, and the kind of lots of coaches and bombardment to a degree. And I remember you told Mike, or maybe it was Deion that did. I can't remember specifically, that Notre Dame had been in the most consistent contact with him after the decommitment. how did you observe, or at least from what he told you, observe of staying in contact to let him know that we're still interested, we'd still like you, but not trying to go overboard? I'm sure that's a thing that most recruits encounter, of just maybe over persistence to a degree. But I'm kind of curious how you observe them toe the line on the right side of it. So it seems.
Well, with that, I would have to give a bunch of credit to Coach Dale Alexander. I was in contact, or they were in contact with me, at least, if not every week, every other week, I would hear from somebody. Whether it was Coach Alexander or Coach Reese, just checking in, how's the family, and the reason why I say I owe a lot to Coach Alexander was because he let the new relationship or the new communication, he let it happen naturally. And so he wasn't pushy with Deion. He would tell me that he would, put little feelers out there, send Deion different little things, little, inspirational things, maybe send himself. And he just kind of kept those feelers out there, but was never pushy about it. And I think that played a big part in Deion's appreciation for how they recruited him as well, too, because it wasn't one of those things, where they were very pushy about, you need to come on back to us or anything like that. And I think in the long run that, that had to play a big role in his decision as well, is that they just allowed that new relationship to develop naturally, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really kind of illustrates how recruiting is an art and a science, at least from the coach's standpoint. Of every case is going to be different, and you have to be good at kind of reading the room, I guess.
With some recruits, Patrick, they're upset if they are only getting contacted once a week, and with Deion, he did, like, the best way to recruit him was to not overwhelm him. So yeah, more kudos to them. And also I want to add real quick for Patrick X's next question.
Okay.
I'm sure Notre Dame knew that you were taking a step back, whether they sensed that or you told them. But they still wanted to recruit you because you were now a part of – they wanted you as a part of their family. It wasn't we need to sway you, and we already know she wants Notre Dame. They didn't have to talk to you anymore. They already know where you stood. But it was really – from my perspective and talking to you in different sources, it felt like they wanted you as a part of that family.
Right.
So I love that about Notre Dame's
recruiting
Deion.
Yeah. It was sweet. I'll just say that.
So after Deion had initially decommitted, lots of projections or musings kind of had Georgia as one, what he might have been leaning toward, favorite, whatever term you want to put on it. Obviously didn't end up going that way. I'm just kind of curious how you saw that play out, and kind of what the appeal would have been there, but ultimately what led things to go back to Notre Dame instead of Georgia.
I think that the only thing I would say in regards to that is, of course, after he decommitted, a lot of people had him pegged for Georgia because he's in Georgia's backyard. Naturally, that is what a lot of people thought. And he had a chance to visit Georgia on several occasions, and we visited with him on a couple of occasions and went to some games and everything too. But for me, it just goes to show that you just never know with recruiting how things are going to happen. Because I will also say, in the very early stages, like right after he decommitted, Frank and I we kind of thought he might end up at Georgia. We actually talked about it ourselves, that, there's a chance he really, might end up at Georgia. But one of the things that we told Deion was, regardless of where he ended up, we were going to always support him 100%, because he has to be comfortable. He has to be happy with his decision, because he's the one that has to go to school. He's the one, that has to put in the work to play a game that he loves to play, that he's been playing since he was 4 years old. So at the end of the day, he has to do what's best for him. And as parents, we still, tried to guide him and tell him the things that we thought he should be thinking about when he wanted to choose a school, with education being the first one. But ultimately, it had to be his decision.
And you mentioned Frank, that's of course your husband, Frank Jackson.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so I think with the whole Georgia thing, and Georgia was recruiting him. I heard from, the receiver coach at Georgia, heard from Kirby a couple of times. But at the end of the day, Deion had mapped out how he wanted this to go, and what he was looking for and what he was monitoring in terms of, how many receivers. People don't realize Deion was really doing his homework. He was looking at how many receivers are already there? How many receivers are ahead of me? How many receivers are they taking in my class? So a lot of people don't know that Deion's a student of the game. So all of that played into, his decision, because ultimately with any athlete, you want to play. You don't want to sit behind somebody for 2 years. So you want to put yourself in the best position to be able to hit that field as early as possible. So, but that was what it was with Georgia.
Now, before we let you go, Yolanda, I got to ask one more question. So my last time I've sat down with you, which was right before Deion committed, I asked you, when has it set in? Because this was before he had announced his commitment, but he had told you. I asked, is it set in that Deion is committed? And you told me, I think it will, once he signs. Well, here you are wearing your Notre Dame shirt. You got the poster of Deion and from his Notre Dame visit behind you, and you get to see that every day. So I'm going to ask the same question. Has it set in that your son's committed to Notre Dame now?
It has. It has. It has sank in a little bit more. And I think I know we're in the home stretch to signing day now. So once we get there and he signs, then that's that. But he's not going to be changing his mind. So we're in the home stretch preparing for signing day.
Well, Yolanda, thank you so much for joining this episode of Pod Like a Champion. I'm looking forward to going back out to Athens, probably for a playoff game, because Athens guys always making a playoff run. So I will come back out and catch a playoff game, hopefully state title game too.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited. I am glad to be an almost official part of the Notre Dame family. And I tell you, I will say this though, we are so stoked that we have already, I think you might have reported it, but we've already purchased our tickets and flights for every single game next year, home and away.
Oh, yeah.
I think I read that in The Athletic. Pete Sampson. Yeah, that was awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, so we are ready to go and excited.
All right, before we let you go, I got to sneak in one more thing. Yolanda, tell me about your Twitter following, because Notre Dame fans love you. They absolutely love you. When I'm writing articles and about Deion, like kind of teasing, where's he going to go? And of course, the article doesn't directly answer that, but,
right.
I try to do my best job on that. You're retweeting it to kind of throw people hints and whatnot. Tell me about your Twitter game, because the Notre Dame fans listening to this, they love you, and you know that.
I don't really have a plan, just because I'm a huge Notre Dame fan. It's almost like anything on Twitter that's Notre Dame, I pretty much will retweet it to just kind of show and solidify how huge of a Notre Dame fan I really am. But I don't know. I didn't realize that people, follow me or love me like that. I never knew that.
Oh, they do. They do.
Fans on Twitter are full force.
This podcast is going to do huge numbers. We're going to make sure in the headline of this podcast that your name is in there. So, absolutely.
Well, that's very interesting. That's wow. That's all I can say. I don't know. I don't do anything really intentional other than I am intentionally retweeting anything about Notre Dame. But maybe too, because, I can get a little feisty if you get out of pocket.
I'm happy I never crossed that bridge.
Yes, that's sort of like, when he first decommitted and, people say what they want to say. And, I'm mindful about what I say. But, I'll just, I had to tell somebody one time, just watch your mouth. That's my son. If you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything.
I remember that.
But maybe that's it. I don't know. And I like to keep it real. That's just me. I like to keep it real. I like to tell people from a real perspective, how things are going. But for me, like I told Deion that before he made his decision, this was a while back, it didn't matter to me where he ended up, although I definitely wanted him to come back to Notre Dame. But I told him at my house, there was always going to be a Notre Dame flag and the flag of wherever he went. So, luckily, just one flag flying at my house, and that's the Notre Dame flag, which I have.
Well, Yolanda, thank you again so much for joining this episode of Pod Like a Champion.
Thank you, guys. You guys stay safe, wash your hands, wear your mask, and socially distance. All right?
Oh, we'll do, Yolanda.
All right. I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. And to the Twitter fans, thank you.